Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Marcus Thompson always believed that a life together was built on small gestures. A coffee left on the table before work, quick text messages in the middle of the afternoon, a simple, "I'm home," when walking through the front door. To him, those details were the invisible glue that held a marriage together. Married for 6 years to Rachel, a nurse at a private hospital, he'd always respected her night shifts and never questioned her when she said she needed to cover for a coworker. After all, healthcare work was unpredictable, demanding, full of emergencies that didn't follow business hours. Marcus worked as a medical equipment technician, visiting clinics and hospitals all over Columbus, and he understood the rhythm of the field perfectly. So he never saw any reason to be suspicious. That Thursday in October, Marcus was on the couch watching a replay of a football game when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Rachel: "Don't wait up for dinner, I'm on shift tonight. Kiss." He stared at the screen for a few seconds, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He replied with a heart emoji and turned his attention back to the TV, but something felt off. Rachel never worked on Thursdays. Her fixed schedule was Monday through Wednesday, 7 in the morning to 7 at night. Thursday and Friday were her days off, and she'd always made a point of keeping that routine so they could have weekends together. Marcus tried to push the uneasy feeling away, but it lingered, like a stone in his shoe. He picked up his phone again, opened their shared banking app, and checked recent transactions. Groceries, pharmacy, gas station, nothing out of the ordinary. Until his eyes landed on a purchase from 2 days earlier, a high-end lingerie store, for $180. Marcus frowned. Rachel never bought things like that. She was practical, always preferred comfort over looks, and often said expensive lingerie was a waste of money. In 6 years of marriage, he could count on one hand the times he'd seen her wear anything more elaborate. And now, suddenly, a purchase like this? He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a gift for a friend. Maybe she just wanted to feel good about herself. But the coincidence with the last-minute shift was too uncomfortable to ignore. Marcus turned off the TV and sat there, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He remembered small details from the past few weeks that, on their own, seemed insignificant, but now started forming a pattern. Rachel had switched perfumes to something woodier, more sensual. She'd started getting her nails done more often. She began packing lunch for work instead of eating in the hospital cafeteria, saying she was trying to save money. And there was this strange habit of flipping her phone face down whenever she was home, something she'd never done before. Marcus shook his head, trying to push the thoughts away. He didn't want to be that paranoid husband, the kind who saw betrayal in every shadow. But the unease wouldn't let him rest. He tried to sleep but spent the whole night tossing and turning, his pillow hot, his mind racing. When the alarm went off at 6 in the morning, Marcus was already awake. Rachel hadn't come home. He checked his phone, no messages from her. He tried calling, but it just rang until it went to voicemail. Marcus got up, made coffee, and stood there in the kitchen, staring at the steaming cup without drinking. He made a decision. He wasn't going to sit around imagining scenarios, drowning in doubt. He was going to find out the truth. Right away. Marcus picked up the landline and called St. Mary's Hospital, where Rachel worked. A woman's voice answered after 3 rings. "Good morning, St. Mary's Hospital, how can I help you?" Marcus took a deep breath, keeping his voice calm. "Good morning. I'd like to confirm if Nurse Rachel Thompson is on shift today. I'm family and need to pass along urgent information." There was a pause as the receptionist checked the system. "1 moment, please." Marcus gripped the phone tightly, his heart pounding. "Sir, I checked the schedule, and Nurse Rachel isn't scheduled for any shifts this week. Her shift is Monday through Wednesday, 7 to 7. Thursday and Friday are her days off." Marcus thanked her in a neutral tone and hung up. He stood there for a few seconds, processing the information. Rachel had lied. There was no shift. There never had been. Marcus felt his stomach twist, a mix of anger and pain rising in his throat. He grabbed his car keys, put on his jacket, and walked out. He didn't have a clear plan, just the certainty that he needed to see it with his own eyes. He drove to the hospital, parked across the street, and waited. He knew Rachel always ate lunch in the hospital cafeteria when she was on shift, usually between noon and 1. So he positioned himself where he could see the main entrance. 2 hours later, nothing. She wasn't there. Marcus called her cell again. Straight to voicemail. He took a deep breath, trying to think clearly. If she wasn't at the hospital, where was she? Marcus remembered Rachel's mother, who lived 20 minutes away. Maybe she was dealing with a family matter and had made up the shift excuse so he wouldn't worry. It was a weak possibility, but he needed to check. He drove to his in-laws' house, a modest home in a quiet neighborhood. When he arrived, his mother-in-law was watering plants in the front yard. She looked surprised to see him. Marcus. What a surprise. Is everything okay? He forced a smile. Everything's fine, Mrs. Helen. Is Rachel here? His mother-in-law frowned. Rachel? No, son. She hasn't been by in about 3 weeks. Why? Did something happen? Marcus shook his head. No, nothing. Just thought she might be here. Thanks, Mrs. Helen. And he left before she could ask more questions. Back in the car, Marcus felt his hands shaking on the wheel. His head ached, his breathing was shallow. Then he remembered something. 2 years earlier, after Rachel had been followed by a stranger on the street, they'd installed a shared location tracking app on their phones, for safety. Marcus had never used it, he trusted her completely. But now, he opened the app, which was still active. The map loaded and showed a blue dot moving. Rachel was in a residential neighborhood 15 minutes away, in an area of new, expensive homes, nowhere near the hospital, nowhere she had any reason to be. Marcus pulled out, driving on autopilot, his vision blurred by adrenaline. He reached the neighborhood and followed the coordinates. The streets were tree-lined and quiet, with modern homes featuring clean architectural lines. He turned onto a side street and saw Rachel's car parked in front of a 2-story house with a well-kept garden. Marcus parked a few houses down, turned off the engine, and just sat there, watching. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst out of his chest. Half an hour dragged by like an eternity. He kept his eyes on the house, on her car, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then the front door opened. Rachel came out, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a tall man in a well-tailored gray suit, dark hair slicked back. Marcus recognized him immediately, Dr. Andrew Carlson, head of the emergency department at St. Mary's. Married, 3 kids, always praised as a model professional, the kind who gave talks on medical ethics and leadership. They were standing close, chatting, and Rachel laughed at something he said, a loose, intimate laugh, completely different from the cold tone she'd used with Marcus in recent months. When Rachel turned to head to her car, Andrew placed a hand on her waist, pulled her back, and kissed her cheek, lingering longer than would be appropriate for any professional relationship. She smiled, touched his face, and got into her car. Marcus gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. His breath came out heavy, angry. He wanted to get out, confront them, yell. But something held him back. It wasn't fear, it was strategy. If he made a scene right there on the street, without solid proof, Rachel could come up with any excuse. She could say they were just co-workers, that he was overreacting, that it was all innocent. Marcus needed more. He needed something she couldn't deny. So he waited for Rachel to leave, wrote down the address, and got home before she did. He walked straight to his home office, opened his computer, synced to Rachel's email and cloud accounts. She'd always been careless with passwords, using the same ones everywhere. Marcus had never invaded her privacy before, but this was different now. He logged into her email, then into the deleted messages folder, which was still in the trash. And there it all was. Dozens of messages between Rachel and Andrew. Intimate conversations, plans for secret meetings, affectionate phrases, photos he chose not to open. Messages going back months. The affair wasn't recent, it was systematic, planned, careful. Marcus saved everything onto a flash drive, every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. Then he took a deep breath and waited. When Rachel got home around 9 that night, acting like she'd just finished an exhausting shift, Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table with a brown envelope in front of him. She walked in, tossed her bag on the couch, and let out a tired sigh. "What a day," she said, running a hand through her hair. Marcus watched her in silence. "Tough shift?" he asked, his voice calm, almost indifferent. Rachel grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. "Exhausting. Barely had time to eat lunch." The ER was packed. Marcus nodded slowly. "I get it. Must be hard working so much." She took a sip of water, eyeing him suspiciously. "Are you okay? You seem off." Marcus opened the envelope and spread printed copies of the messages across the table. Page after page. Rachel froze, the water bottle suspended in midair. "Funny," Marcus said, his voice still calm but edged with icy sharpness. "Because from what I can see here, you weren't in the ER. You had a perfectly good lunch, at Dr. Andrew Carlson's house. Actually, it wasn't even lunch, it was more like a long, private date." Rachel's face went pale. She set the bottle down on the counter, her hands trembling. "Marcus, I can explain." He let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Explain what, Rachel? Explain the messages you've been exchanging for months? Explain the I love yous you've been sending him? Or explain the $180 lingerie you bought to wear for him?" Rachel tried to move closer, reaching out her hands. "It was a mistake. I was confused, I felt alone." Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making her step back. "Alone? I was always here. Always. I gave you attention, respect, trust. And you? You gave me lies." Rachel started crying, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen. He gave me attention when I needed it most. You were always working, always tired, always." Marcus cut her off. "Don't blame me. Don't you dare blame your betrayal on me. I worked to support this home. To pay the bills you racked up. To give you the life you wanted. And you repaid me by sleeping with your boss?" She sobbed, sinking to her knees. "Please, Marcus. We can get through this. We can go to therapy, rebuild. I still love you." Marcus looked at her with a mix of pity and contempt. "You love me? You have a very interesting way of showing love. Must be the kind that includes sleeping with another man while your husband waits for you at home." Rachel reached for his hand, but Marcus pulled away. "I've already made my decision. And just so you know, Dr. Andrew's wife got copies of all this afternoon." Rachel's eyes widened, her tears stopping for a second. You didn't do that." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her the sent email. "I did. And I also sent everything to the hospital's ethics committee. Breach of professional conduct, inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. I imagine Dr. Andrew will have a lot of explaining to do in the coming days." Rachel stood up, desperate. "You ruined his career. You had no right." Marcus stepped toward her, locking eyes. "I had no right? He had no right to destroy my marriage. You had no right to betray me. But you did. So now deal with the consequences." Rachel tried to argue, saying he was being cruel, overreacting, but Marcus had already grabbed his keys. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight. I'll come back tomorrow for my things. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. The house is in my name, it was bought with my money before we got married. You're not entitled to anything." Rachel collapsed to the floor again, crying, begging. But Marcus walked out the door without looking back, leaving her alone with the weight of her choices. In the days that followed, the story exploded. Dr. Andrews' wife, Patricia, a well-known attorney, not only filed for divorce but exposed everything publicly on social media. She posted the messages, the photos, a full timeline of the affair. Andrews' reputation, built over decades, crumbled in 48 hours. Colleagues who once admired him now avoided him in the hallways. Patients requested to be transferred to other doctors. The hospital's ethics committee launched a formal investigation, and 2 weeks later, Andrew was suspended from his position as department head while the process unfolded. The humiliation was public, complete, and devastating. Rachel didn't come out unscathed either. Hospital staff who'd already suspected something between her and Andrew now had confirmation. The glances in the hallways changed, conversations stopped when she approached. The nursing director called her in for a formal talk. Though she hadn't technically broken any explicit rules, the situation was untenable. She was asked to resign, with a promise of a neutral letter of recommendation if she left quietly. Rachel accepted, defeated. She lost her job, her reputation, and worst of all, her emotional stability. She moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, far from everyone and everything she knew. Marcus, meanwhile, moved forward with cold determination. He sold the house they'd shared, he couldn't bear stepping foot in it again. He bought a smaller apartment in a new, modern neighborhood with no memories attached. He focused on work, took on more projects, expanded his client base. A few months later, at a medical equipment trade show in Cincinnati, he met Laura, a sales representative for a hospital tech company. She was direct, intelligent, had a genuine smile, and carried no heavy emotional baggage. They started talking, meeting up, and Marcus realized it was possible to start over without dragging the past behind him. 6 months after the confrontation, Marcus ran into Rachel on the street, by chance, outside a downtown coffee shop. She looked different, thinner, her face tired, the light in her eyes dimmed. She carried a grocery bag and seemed smaller, hunched, as if the world had stripped her of all confidence. When their eyes met, she stopped, hesitating. Marcus stopped too, his expression neutral. "Hi, Marcus," she said, her voice low, almost shy. "Hi, Rachel," he replied, without emotion. She hesitated, searching for words that seemed to slip away. You look good." Marcus nodded. "I am. I hope you are too." An awkward silence settled between them, heavy with everything left unsaid. Rachel took a step forward, as if wanting to say more. "Marcus, I wanted to apologize. Really. I ruined everything. I know that. And he raised a hand, gently cutting her off. "You don't need to apologize. What's done is done. I've already moved on." She swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears. "I know. I just wanted you to know I regret it. Every single day." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. There was no anger, no bitterness, just distant calm. "Rachel, I learned something these past few months. I learned that trust is like glass. Once it breaks, you can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always be there. Always. And I don't want to spend my life staring at those cracks." Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. "I understand. I lost everything, Marcus. My job, the house, you. Everything." Marcus took a deep breath. "You didn't lose it. You chose it. Every lie, every secret meeting, every deleted message, it was all your choice. And choices have consequences. He stepped to the side, ready to walk away. Take care of yourself, Rachel. And he left. Rachel stood on the sidewalk, watching the man who once loved her walk away without looking back even once. The tears kept falling, now mixed with bitter understanding. She'd traded 6 years of loyalty, respect, and real love for a few afternoons of cheap thrills that cost her everything. Andrew had vanished from her life too. After the messy divorce, he'd moved to another state, trying to rebuild a career that would never shine the same way again. He'd tried reaching out to Rachel a few times, but she blocked him. She wanted nothing more to do with him. The attraction she'd felt, the excitement of the forbidden, it all evaporated once she faced the real consequences. Marcus, on the other hand, found a peace he hadn't expected. It wasn't euphoric peace, but quiet, solid peace. The pain was still there, emotional scars he'd probably carry for years, but he'd learned that rebuilding is possible, that betrayal doesn't define who you are, it only reveals who the other person truly was. He remarried 2 years later, to Laura. The ceremony was simple and intimate, just close friends and family. When they exchanged vows, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt with Rachel in the final years of their marriage: certainty. Certainty that he was standing beside someone who valued him, respected him, and understood the weight of a promise. Marcus and Rachel's story became one of those people tell in conversations about relationships, a reminder that trust isn't guaranteed, it's built day by day. And once broken, it rarely rebuilds the same way. Rachel went on with her life, eventually landing a job at a smaller clinic in another city. She never got seriously involved with anyone again, carrying the weight of knowing she'd had something precious and threw it away. Andrew moved on too, but his career never regained its former luster. He now works at a smaller hospital, far from the spotlight, just another doctor among many. And Marcus? Marcus learned the hardest lesson life can teach, that love isn't enough without respect. That a marriage is built on small, daily acts of honesty, and when those are replaced with lies, everything collapses. He learned that the greatest revenge isn't anger or public exposure, it's simply moving forward, building a better life, and letting other people's mistakes echo on their own. Because in the end, everyone reaps exactly what they sow, and Rachel had planted lies in fertile soil of trust, hoping no one would notice. But the harvest came, bitter and unavoidable. And Marcus, who could have been destroyed, chose to rebuild. Stronger, wiser, more careful about who he let into his life. And in that rebuilding, he found something Rachel never gave him: true peace. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.